After my husband returned from Afghanistan quadriplegic, our shock couldn't fathom the far-reaching effects that the situation was going to have on our future at first. Then days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, months turned into years. The bills continued to pile up, and having already left the service myself, I was unable to work because of my husband's caregiving needs. Our 3 children continued to grow and need from us what every child needs from a parent: presence and guidance. And we were both struggling to give them either one of those. I was exhausted. I felt like I was being pulled in a million different directions all at once. And my husband was frustrated and he was in constant pain. We tried moving to get away from all the stares of the other military families who didn't know what to say to us. And we all felt awkward together. We're looking for family support. It didn't work. My exhaustion turned into binge eating and depression, and my husband's frustration turned into anger and paranoia. So it became a vicious cycle that felt very hopeless. Caregivers need people that we can talk to, that we can say anything, just to help us understand our situation. But we also need people who understand our situation without us needing to say anything. I know that I needed that. I know the value of that. For myself and for my husband, every decision to try one more time, to see one more counselor, to go one more day, to forgive one more hurt, has resulted in us changing throughout this journey. We have transformed from 2 individuals who were lost, confused, hurting, groping around in a darkness of ignorance, to what I feel is a beautiful example of 2 made 1 through the power of faith, trust, sacrifice, and the healing power of helping others like us. We as caregivers, we need to know not only that we can survive, our families can survive an illness, injury, or wound. We also need to know that they can thrive. But we need to know that we can't do it alone.
Thank you, Shannon, for, as always, your candid sharing and your heartfelt expressions of the moving stories and the reality of the experience that not only post 9/11 caregivers like you, but the pre-9/11 caregivers also face. Caregivers who are spouses like yourself, or parents, or siblings, or friends. The exhaustion and the frustration that you expressed were some of the things that the RAND report identified last year. And those feelings of hopelessness, that's very natural. Those feelings that can lead to a real sense of isolation and being alone. That kind of isolation that you can't be understood, and that you're ashamed of the doubts that you have, and afraid of the future. That inability to share with anybody else who gets it. This isolation that is very real, it can lead to some of the mental health problems that you alluded to with depression, and it can also lead to a lot of physical health problems for the caregiver and other members of the family. That is why the RAND report strongly recommended that caregivers needed to have structured social support in order to prevent the negative consequences of the isolation. This model of structured social support, there was a strong model that we found in the military veteran caregiver community, and that happened to be TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. For over 20 years, they have helped more than 50,000 survivors of a military death with peer support, structured social support. And with the guidance of TAPS and caregivers like you, Virginia, others out there, and our partner organizations and donor organizations like Catherine and Bristol Myers Squibb Foundation, and many in the audience, military and veteran service organizations, faith-based organizations, corporations and foundations, we have been able to create a structured social support system, which is the Military and Veteran Caregiver Network. Today, we're honored, thanks to Senator Dole, to be able to launch that network to offer caregivers the best practices in peer support through 6 programs. There will be an online peer support community that is already up and running. There is the peer mentor program we're recruiting for, the community-based support groups, also a resource library, a master calendar where any one of you can input and find events, activities, training for caregivers, and a magazine for and by caregivers. I urge you to read that tonight. Through the network, thousands of vetted caregivers nationwide, like Shannon and Virginia, like Melissa, like Jessica, like Andrea and others, will be able to engage to exchange their experience, their empathy, to educate and encourage one another. And they'll be able to do this with access in a secure environment that gives them the essential companionship that they so desperately needed to address this isolation that they often feel. The Military and Veteran Caregiver Network, thanks to all of you, will strengthen caregivers who selflessly sacrifice so much, so willingly, to ensure their sustained collaboration and support of one another, and to return accountable results to the public and to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And Shannon, thank you so much for sharing that personal story. It's a real honor to be sharing this stage with all of you. Thank you also to the Dole Foundation and to Senator Dole, without whose efforts none of this would be happening. In response to Senator Dole's call to action last year in support of military and veteran caregivers, the Bristol Myers Squibb Foundation is proud to be partnering with TAPS as a funder to enable the development of the online peer support community, a platform for caregivers to help increase their sense of connectedness, engagement, wellness, and hopefulness, while reducing the reported sense of isolation that Linda talks so much about. I've heard Linda say in the past, it's not therapy, but it's very therapeutic. And from the evidence side, we know peer support works. This secure online peer support community will offer trained peer moderators to support caregiver communications 24/7, 365 days a year. It is safe, secure, has a sophisticated IT backend with a user-friendly front end. Caregivers will benefit as both recipients and providers of peer support, sharing their experiences through social platforms such as online chats, bulletin boards, webinars, and other features. I recently had a chance to view a demo of this online peer support community and would like to commend TAPS and, of course, Linda, the mastermind behind the whole thing, for this milestone and the ability for such a platform to now facilitate over 50,000 caregiver connections. and produce a trained cadre of hundreds of caregiver peer mentors, online moderators, and support group facilitators. We at the Bristol Myers Squibb Foundation believe that our commitment to our partners serves not only to implement novel models of care and support for veterans and their families, but also to provide the much needed evidence from such an investment. To that end, TAPS will be working with research partners to evaluate the mental health and well-being outcomes of the caregivers in our pilot study. So stay tuned for those results. In closing, we are excited about not only the 50,000 caregivers who will be reached in this project, but the potential of this online community to ultimately directly impact all of the 5.5 million military and veteran caregivers.
My name is Virginia Peacock, and I'm the Elizabeth Dole Fellow from South Carolina. In my caregiver journey these last 8 years since my Air Force combat flight medic husband was injured, there have been many times that I have felt isolated, lonely, lost, and unsure who I really was anymore. My emotions eventually culminated in suicidal thoughts. I was so tired from fighting for benefits and compensation, for fighting for correct treatment for my husband, and even fighting my husband to be his best self. I felt there was no reason to go on. Hardest of all, I could see how Dave's injuries and my anxiety was affecting our son. I was so lucky and am so lucky to have a wonderful caregiver coordinator through the VA caregiver program. She got me the help that I needed through VA counselors. I appreciate that Secretary McDonald is here today, because more and more that the VA understands us, the more that they can help us. Another positive change that has happened in my life is my job. Early on in caregiving, I'd had to leave my job as a pediatric nurse, and it affected both my mental and my physical health. So when my boss reached out to me after life had calmed down and offered me a position, a flexible position based on my family schedule, it helped decrease my feelings of isolation, and it brought back the joy in my life that only working with kids does. Carrie and Precious talked about how employment helps restore income and personal identity. I'd like to add to that, it helps restore mental health too. The MilVet Caregiver Network, described by Linda and Catherine, will also make an enormous difference, providing caregivers with peer support and partners in order to increase their sense of connectedness, engagement, hopefulness, wellness, knowledge, and skills. And it has already made a difference in my life by providing me another flexible job from home, part-time, as a community-based peer support subject matter expert and master trainer. And yes, I have learned how to juggle all of this from my mentor, Elizabeth Dole. The network and other nonprofits working with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation are also placing a lot of emphasis on finding ways to help our kids too, which is so critical to our families and obviously a very soft spot to me. We never want our caregivers to go through what Shannon and I have gone through. And if they do, we want them to have that support to get them through. Thank you.